he gets the proper motivation. So that's my story about Timothy. Very inspiring student. The title of Timothy's thesis is Bill Nye, the Science Guy, Employing Entertainment in Education. Welcome, Timothy.
Am I audible? I think I am. Okay. First of all, I would like to thank everyone here. I would like to thank my panelists, Mr. Strickland and Mr. Zorian, for becoming my panelists. I will thank Miss Lila for the first time in 1 year for teaching me a lesson that I really hate. And then I would like to thank my friends who has helped me, and also all the audiences, as well as my parents. Although they're not here, they're working, and I prefer that because then it means they love me. Anyhow, without further ado, I'm just going to start my thesis. Tomorrow is the day. Tomorrow you are to take the final exam. Tomorrow determines whether you will walk out of this school with a cap and toga or reattend classes in the same embarrassing uniform. You panic. Throughout the semester, your teachers have either taught you absolutely nothing or too much. They've either messed around in class, playing unrelated games with you and your friends, or they flexed their insanely difficult lessons, painting the whiteboard with unexplainable scientific jargon. Regardless, despite your best efforts to adapt, you just cannot grasp the materials to prepare for. So what do? Well, obviously, you will do what all students try. Just forget about the test. Instead of studying, you will open your phone, scroll through social media, catch up on what your friends last posted, or what your favorite YouTubers have just uploaded. What a terrible blunder! How silly are you to procrastinate on the one test that matters? Now, while this irresponsible choice to indulge in entertainment might seem foolish, how would you react if I said that it was actually the wisest decision that you could have made? That the entertaining videos that you watch was actually the key to understanding. That with entertainment, education blossoms. Well, I'm talking about popular science. The science that whets your craving for entertainment, but also your longing for knowledge. Now, while this juxtaposition might seem risky, I argue that it's ultimately worthwhile. That is, despite its necessity to selectively sacrifice complete information for entertainment, people should accept YouTube popular science videos. Now, the promotion of science using entertainment is not at all a new phenomenon. For example, back in the 17th century, scientist Robert Boyle would repeatedly resuscitate and resurrect birds to teach the science behind pressure. Obviously, nowadays that would probably get him cancelled. So instead, these days, science is disseminated to the public through video forms, such as in television or social media. In this thesis, though, I only focus on YouTube, as it has become the latest controversy among science communicators. However, before we deep dive into this sea of online science communication, we must understand what it means. To do so, I borrow the AEIOU definition of science communication, which says that truly effective science communication strives for 5 feedbacks: awareness, enjoyment, interest, opinions, and understanding. To achieve these 5 feedbacks, I advocate for popular science, which is essentially a technique that incorporates elements of entertainment into the scientific content through appropriate simplification. So how exactly does YouTube then come into play in this matter of popular science? Well, for one, the visual features of YouTube videos effectively engage audiences. And then the comment section also fosters public discourse. However, YouTube is a double-edged sword. Because of its accessibility, people can abuse entertainment-driven YouTube to spread anti-science ideas. The sacrifice of accuracy for entertainment is called sensationalism. Then, the recommendation algorithm in YouTube only worsens this issue, as it could create echo chambers for such videos. No wonder scientists are very skeptical of popular science. However, is such worry really justified? Does the scale propping up entertainment and education cares about which side carries more weight? Well, it matters more than you think. The dispute behind popular science is like a snowball at the peak of a hill, that's only a breeze away from rolling uncontrollably to a side and slamming whichever scientists or layman that happen to live down that edge. Quite unluckily, YouTube is no breeze. It's a winter cyclone. It boasts over 2.5 billion monthly users and contains a mysterious recommendation system that assumes total dictatorship over all the videos that you watch. So we must take this issue very seriously. The next possible step, then, is to figure out a solution. Dismissing popular science entirely, nitpicking its inaccuracies, and classifying it as ineffective solely because it might abuse that enjoyment factor is ignorant. Such an approach paints scientists as dull robots, doing more harm than good. Instead, we must embrace popular science as it is. For entertainment can provoke education if done right, but it can only serve that role if we are willing to take it seriously. Thus, I propose 3 arguments for why we should indeed take it seriously. First, discernment must supervise the scale between entertainment and education, which requires the virtue of temperance. To understand why, let us deconstruct both sides of the scale. On one side of the scale, excessive information depersonalizes scientists into humorless drones. This is because overloading information on the audiences only makes science feel unapproachable to them. Instead, scientists must first bond with the audiences. Research shows that these science communicators become very successful community builders as a direct result of their storytelling expertise or charming animations. This shows that scientists must first appeal to entertainment so that the audiences become more motivated to learn. On the other side of the scale, though, excessive entertainment degrades scientists into obsolete comedians. First, research shows that people would accept popular science sources more readily, despite evaluating it to be no more trustworthy than an academic source. This is called the easiness effect. Then another study found that although people were more engaged with an edutainment delivery, they will inadvertently perceive the video's message to be less serious. This is called the reduction effect. Now, these 2 side effects show that excessive entertainment only waters down science into trivial comedy, stripping away the beauty that comes from complexity. Thus, we can see how putting too much weight on either side of the scale is dangerous. However, a reasonable follow-up question is to dispute where the equilibrium lies. To answer this question, we shall no longer think of these 2 quantities as weights in a scale that countervail each other in isolation, like, pianists taking turns flaunting their pieces, which isn't really music. Instead, popular and academic science are complementary to each other, like the diverse array of musical instruments in an orchestra. Research shows that teachers from the elementary up even to the university level could actually easily incorporate popular science into their courses. This shows that popular science supplements, but does not at all supplant traditional learning methods. Next, now that I have defined the boundaries of entertainment and education in popular science, allow me to tell you the specific benefits of popular science so that we can maximize it within those boundaries. This leads to my second reason, that the increased layman involvement in popular science enhances scientific research, which applies the virtue of fortitude, as great bravery is required to allow the involvement of lay people. To begin, popular science enables scientists to take new perspectives and thus prioritize relevant content. How does it do this? Well, for the layman actually provide the societal impacts of science that they experience through popular science. For example, a research shows that in trying to relate with the audiences, scientists can actually develop broader perspectives for science that they are teaching and also argue its importance within more contexts. In other words, in quite a poetic manner actually, through the education of non-experts, scientists become better experts themselves. However, popular science does not assist scientists alone. It also recruits audiences to help, such as through monetary means. That is, YouTube popular science magnifies funding opportunities. Take the story of Simon Clarke, for example. In 2013, he lost his place for a PhD in the University of Oxford with a full scholarship. Obviously, he was crushed by this fact. On the bright side, though, he did eventually get to study in the University of Exeter, albeit without a scholarship. This time, though, he had discovered a new passion, YouTube. And as he explained and blogged his research in YouTube, he also gained profit from the monetization system. Thus, we could see how he could rely on YouTube to cushion the financial burden of a PhD, such that he could allocate more focus to publishing higher quality research. Finally, popular science also helps the scientists solidify their professional identity. Research shows two major values of professionalism that scientists must hold: connectedness and influence. Now, the entertainment in popular science, paired with the almighty recommendation system in YouTube, definitely expands one's connectedness. However, it also furthers one's influence, because science communicators can maintain trustworthiness with their audiences through emotional intimacy with them, as made possible by the use of entertainment. Thus, we can see how popular science greatly benefits the scientists. However, I argue that it also benefits the lay people. That is, for my third and final reason, popular science enhances audience knowledge to go towards the final virtue of prudence. To see why, let us try to think of the pursuit of scientific knowledge as mining an iceberg. Before we mine the iceberg, we must obviously discover one through its visible surface level section. Similarly, popular science begins its task as a marketer to escalate awareness and enjoyment of scientific knowledge. Research finds three key strategies to achieve this: stories, images, and personalization. Now, popular science actually achieves all three of these criteria. Research shows that science communicators will appeal to their storytelling as well as their aesthetic skills to hook the audiences. Most importantly, though, it's their use of personal humor that really attracts the audiences. Next, once we spot the iceberg, we must start to concern about its bulk, the submerged section of the iceberg. Similarly, once popular science hooks the audiences, it must now start to think of how they can root a desire in science for them. This, of course, appeals to the interest and opinions on scientific knowledge. How does it do this? Well, for people to love science, science must love the people first. Thus, this shows that scientists must first show to the audiences how science is relatable to the audiences. For example, the comment sections can help in this because it can help the audiences to negotiate their own sense of meaning from the content. Finally, to finally realize the full potential of popular science, we must ask the ultimate question. Why did we scour the oceans for such a magnificent iceberg in the first place? Why did we have to entertain the audiences? Why did we have to allow their participation in science? Well, it's to teach. Therefore, as my final reason, popular science elevates understanding of scientific knowledge. First, popular science helps in informal learning, because people who are truly adoring of science will inevitably self-study science. This is very important because then it becomes intrinsically motivated and thus lifelong in nature. However, popular science also helps in more formal learning settings. For example, in her case study, Alison Marsh found that in teaching her students with YouTube Crash Course series, the people who watched from those YouTube videos actually achieved a greater score than those who learned from the textbooks. This shows that the sacrifice of rigor for clarity and for entertainment is actually a very worthwhile trade. So now, despite these very appealing merits of temperance, courage, and wisdom that I have just explained, some of you might remain cynical on whether such promises justify its known disadvantages. Thus, allow me to address some doubts that you might have. First, some of you might argue that popular science's simplification is actually harmful, as people can misinterpret the incomplete information. Now, truthfully, I must admit that even the most moderated popular science script can be somehow misunderstood. However, simplification is actually essential for effective education. To understand why, try recalling how we were taught about the atomic model in school. In school, we learned that electrons are basically tiny balls that rotate around the nucleus like planets revolving around the sun. And that's where most of us stop. But now imagine a decade later, you would talk with your friend who has undertook a physics degree, and he told you horrifying news. The school lied. Electrons are not always ball-like, but they can be waves. And they don't orbit like planets, they just lie in clouds of probability. So, did the school lie then? I don't think so. If anything, including this mold of an atom would probably confuse all of us in the first place. Thus, we can see how simplification then becomes necessary to accommodate the audience's prior knowledge. Next, some of you might argue that if the lack of information might not be an issue, then the excess of entertainment is problematic. That is, some of you might argue that people can be distracted from the entertainment in popular science. Now, of course, all of us agree that we prefer the leisure of entertainment than the mental labor of learning. However, this does not stop the fact that entertainment actually empowers understanding more than it distracts the audiences. Jesus himself understood this. Throughout his ministry, he used earthly parables, entertainment, to convey a heavenly message, education. Now, of course, while his teachings were examples of special revelation, this also applies to general revelation. If anything, general revelation does not hide secrets. Anyone could see God's divine orderliness as expressed in science. For if God created creation with both rationality and personality, so shall we be able to express science with both rationality and personality. Finally, I must address the elephant in the room. Even if you accept popular science, you might not accept YouTube. That is, you worry that the recommendation system in YouTube could promote misinformation ideas. Now, of course, we have all experienced how crudely the algorithm has sometimes screwed over the circulation of truly high-quality content in YouTube. However, we must remember that YouTube is constantly improving. In fact, YouTube constantly implements counteractive measures against misinformation videos. For example, back in 2017, they tweaked their algorithm such that 9 out of any top 10 search results are necessarily credible. And that was 5 years ago. Imagine what YouTube can do in, say, the next decade. So, now that I have addressed some doubts that you might have, allow me to recap what we have learned so far. In this thesis, we learned why everyone must accept popular science. To do so, we first clarified the necessity of temperance and clarified the complementary interplay between entertainment and education that it implies. Then we discovered how popular science actually benefits both of the actors. It briefly encourages profitable and savvy research for the scientists. However, it also wisely fosters awareness, interest, and understanding in the audiences. Through these cardinal virtues, we can finally view popular science for what it truly is, a shared frame of reference in which laypeople and scientists can cooperate. For at the end of the day, reluctance to accept popular science reveals much more than just fear, laziness, or elitism. It reveals the fragility of human relationships. However, this should not at all be the case. Science should not be dividing specialists from laypeople. It should be uniting all of us to exalt God's craftsmanship. So, recall that final exam that you were preparing for. I know that instead of studying, you might be tempted to spoil yourself with social media. But if that tomorrow is really important to your life, then maybe, just maybe, give YouTube edutainment videos a try. When you get back home, lay in your couch and open your phone, instead of indulging in, say, mukbang ASMR videos, perhaps try to entertain yourself with Bill Nye the Science Guy. Who knows, he might accidentally teach you. Now, in my many years of employing YouTube Popular Science, I've taught myself a lot of subjects. And you could do the same if you just embrace popular science. But the most important thing that I've learned from popular science is that we must be eager for knowledge of God's creation. At the same time, though, we must have the humility to share such knowledge with the people around us. Therefore, if you must remember just one thing from my thesis, remember that through popular science, you shall learn to love just as you love to learn. Thank you.
What a quality and very CBCS ending to your thesis. I loved it so much. All right, I'm going to give it to Mr. Zorin first to ask you some questions.
Okay, some questions it were that I've already prepared myself.
Wow.
And I think some of my students might also ask questions here. Let's go with the compliments first. I think in all of your delivery there, it was really a top-notch Timothy the Science Guy instead of Bill Nye. You might not have the bow tie, but you're a science guy. You have this efficiency of volume. You have the ups and downs, pauses, intonation, and everything. It's such a rhetorician.
Thank
And
you.
your arguments are captivating indeed. I have to say there was some arguments that might not be 100%, but I kind of get most of it. But I do have some questions that I think might be require some clarification from you. Let's see, number one. Here's the thing. It can't be helped if you are opening up social media these days. Most people might watch reels, stories, shorts, only 1 minute, and they've got their instant dopamine push, right? Even someone like me, who's like, I think, early millennials, kind of like enjoying it. So how would these students before me, I mean, behind me as well, yeah. How would you respond to that? I mean, is it helping popular science in general, or is it making it worse? Just 1 minute. It's not 10 minutes like that. That's like, what, 5 minutes? Veritasium, like 20-ish. Yeah, it's so different. It's only 1 minute. How do you respond to that trend these days? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So, in my opinion, I personally also kind of don't really like those shorts compared to the longer form videos, because I do believe that it's very difficult to cramp such a lot of science content into like 20 seconds. However, I don't think that just because of that fact, we should dismiss short form videos like in TikTok or YouTube Shorts entirely. Because one thing that I envision about those shorts is that they actually then just becomes this way to attract the audiences first, to then later watch the longer form videos. So it becomes like this medium for, so let's say if I'm going back to the Veritasium video, he actually has a lot of shorts as well, if you see. And if you notice, most of his shorts is actually taken from the longer form videos, but just crunched into the 20 seconds. So what happens is that through that, he usually takes only the interesting parts, and then from that shorts, a lot of the people would usually be interested to then watch the longer form video. And then in the longer form video, they would be more interested to learn the actual thing, and then this snowball effect will eventually transform into pure education. That's how I think that works. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does, because I think it's like a movie has a trailer or teaser, and I think it helps people to be attracted in watching the movie. Yes, I think that's the same kind of like method for that. Good answer, thank you. Number two, here's the thing. There's this Nobel Prize winner, name is Samuel C.C. Ting. He won physics prize or whatever, 1976 or whatnot. Yeah, he's one of the first few Asians to win a Nobel Prize in science. Captivating figure. He even sent a probe into space due to his inventions. He commented in one of the interviews that science, as it is, like in everything in the world, tends to be political. It is by nature tribalistic. In the end, what gets you into this whole award thing, Nobel, whatever, comes with your circles. If you're not with the right group, you will not get elected. And I think that what's happening in every part of life. If you're not with such and so, you may not get your spotlight or whatnot. And as such, there's some politicians behind it, like some scientists, no matter how true their inventions might be, if it's not with the right person, it will be taken down. If you're not coming from the right country, it will be taken down. As simple as that. It was toxic, in short. Now, how does YouTube or whatever, popular science, alleviate this toxicity, this tendency in academic science? What is your argument behind that? Thank you.
All right, thank you for that question. So, in my opinion, the thing about popular science is that it's very refreshing to scientists, because scientists are usually stuck in their own world of science, where they have to like be so rigorous and so like clear and like very complicated. And because of that, there's this sense of elitism in them, right? So there's this political agenda that they must follow to get better, to get more famous in the scientific realm, which is why, if I'm mistaken, there's this statistic that says that most research is actually not really that valid because of how politically motivated most of them are. However, popular science becomes a very refreshing remedy to these very complicated things, because scientists are trained to humble themselves. They need to train themselves to explain the very complicated science that they are learning to the lay people who probably won't even understand a single word if you use jargon, So you should always try to think of new ways to explain your research, thinking of it from a layman perspective, thinking of it from a different perspective, from a practical perspective. And because of that, it helps the scientists to know that, okay, science is actually not as tiny as what I'm involved in right now. It's not just about the awards. It's just not about the money that you get from research. It's also about how it can be useful and entertaining for the audiences if you just know how to express it properly. That's my answer to your question.
Oh, satisfying indeed, because I think because we're bringing the audience into the science, therefore it also gives some accountability, right, to academic science, make them more maybe aware of their problems. I do have some for a third question in case anyone from my class would like to ask. Okay, no, I do have other questions actually. Right, my last question. Have you heard about the term bastardization?
Bastardization?
Yes, I know it's a weird word.
Kinda, but I haven't really seen it formally.
When something gets adulterated, when it's not pure anymore, when it's already mixed up with many needs, right? For example, I mean, if you see popular science, it's fun, it's entertaining, but as such, it no longer holds its charm. In fact, it ends up being such a, maybe, a gatekeeper. Like, why should I study science? I can get it from YouTube instead. I can get it from this and that instead. It ends up having a negative effect on the public because they know everything is in the YouTube, everything in the popular science. How would you respond to that, where it gets to be in this phase, the bastardization? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think that obviously the thing about science is that although it's objective, its expression to the people is subjective. So the way we explain it can be like, it can be bastardizing science. It could be like making it feel trivial, like something I don't need to learn. But from my personal experience is that the thing about popular science is that it makes people less thinking about, okay, the science that I'm learning right now can be easily explained in this way, but more so the fact that it can be explained in this way shows that science is much more complex than the way it's first like thought about. So when for example, when I'm watching a popular science video, I'm usually in awe of the like the things that they display, and from that awe, usually it doesn't usually make me like, okay, I don't. If it's fun, then that's it. That the purpose is just for the fun of it. But instead, I become motivated to learn. Okay, how did that happen? How did the laws of science dictate the things that happen, such that such an interesting reaction happened? And that curiosity of cause and effect that is this instilled in popular science is something that does not at all bastardize science. In fact, it usually encapsulates the audience to even learn more about science in a more rigorous way. In fact, I think that's how I first learned about like science and math. Like I used to hate math, to be honest, but then there's this YouTuber called 3 Blue 1 Brown, and all he does is just try to visualize math. Just visualizing it in unique ways, in different ways. And the more I watch it, the more I'm like thinking like, okay, that means that math is something much more than just equations. It can actually be pleasing to the eye, can be for delight. And because of that, I become more interested to learn science rigorously. So I now taught myself like a lot of things in math through university just because it started from my popular science video. So that's my answer to your question.
Okay, thank you. That's a classical and scientific answer from Timothy, the science guy. Now I'm going to leave over to a science teacher himself, Mr. Wade.
Good job, Timothy. I thought you did a great job delivering your thesis. And I want to ask you, though, isn't there a sense in which this, aren't you making a commentary sort of about the state of our young people today, that they need entertainment in order to learn? What do you think? Okay,
thank you for that very, I guess it's an observation that I'm just not just starting to realize. But but my response to that is, okay, obviously with how trends have been moving, of course, the way we express science will continuously change. And of course, nowadays, because of the advent of social media and entertainment, a lot of people now yearn their like dopamine hit rather than learning, right? And although, of course, this shows like the badness, not the badness. It's not really showing a de-evolution, in my opinion. In my opinion, this change towards entertainment does not at all show that science is not science, but like the way that young people are thinking is degrading. Instead, I think of it as a different perspective. Because the thing is that people back then, they live in a very different condition from how we live today. So back then, the reason why people don't really like prioritize the dopamine hit effect is because they usually have a lot of more priorities to do. But nowadays, with a lot of the leisure that we have, it actually makes sense to then utilize that free time that you have to make popular science videos. So I don't think at all that popular science like shows a degradation of human level evolution or something. It just shows that scientists must just adapt to how people are changing, and because of that, the way that they're going to teach science. That's my answer to your question.
Okay, very good. It reminds me of, even way back about 100 years ago when I was in college, or maybe 70 years ago when I was in college, there was a physics professor. Everybody wanted this. If you had to take physics, you tried to get this guy because he was a crazy professor that did all kinds of crazy demos in class, and it was entertaining. Everybody wanted it. Now, do you think that even at university level, aside from YouTube, professors could learn from that and bring entertainment into the classroom like this physics professor did way back in the 80s?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that question. I think that it definitely can. In my research, I've also cited some cases in which university professors implement some more entertaining things towards their courses. For example, I remember there's this specific professor who uploads his lectures in YouTube, and what he does is he just makes like one of the craziest experiments in the world. Like, for example, if you want to teach about the Newton's law, for example, he would like nearly kill himself essentially for like with a ball or something. But like he knows it's not gonna kill him by the laws of science. And so this shows that the entertainment is actually not exclusive to, say, the lay people or like the people who are just starting to do science. It can also help with those who are already quite knowledgeable, because it only strengthens that their bond, their already existing bond with science, into a more fun way. And in my opinion, that entertaining perspective of science will always grow to that desire for science, which in the end always goes towards understanding of science, which is why I think that it can be applied to the university level as well.
All right, great. And it seems to me that, as you start watching YouTube videos, popular science on a particular subject, the deeper you get into the subject, the less videos you can really have. You're going to get more detailed, and it's going to, by definition, maybe get boring to the layperson. Do you think that's true or not?
Thank you for that question. So I'm assuming you meant by how, as the more you watch these deeper
in other words,
videos.
Yeah, YouTube, like pop science, would be great for broad overviews and the general, maybe, the level 1 kind of classes. But as you get deeper into scientific understanding, it seems a little bit more difficult to create such YouTube videos. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Okay, I see your concern. Okay, thank you for that question. So I think that's not at all a problem. So to explain why, I remember so in 12th grade we just learned about capacitors, we just learned about inductors and magnetic induction and all that. And I've basically like self-taught myself so deep into it, and I've never watched a popular science video about it. And then one day YouTube they recommended me a video that's related to it. And I just for fun, I start watching it. And instead of feeling like, okay, this is some trivial stuff that I don't really care, like this should not at all. What is this for? I'm much higher than this. Instead of that, I have more aha moments. Like when I watch this video, it's like, oh, when you push this magnet through this coil, it actually floats and things like that. It just makes me feel, oh, so the science that I'm learning, that I have already learned, actually has fun applications to it. It actually has a lot of things that could be good for my enjoyment. And this shows that science then should not be something that's centered only around boringness and things like that. It's actually very, very complex and diverse, and it can be expressed in many more beautiful ways. That's in my opinion, yeah.
Okay, good. Maybe one more. Do I have time for one more? So it seems like, I don't really know, I haven't seen a lot of these pop science videos, so I don't know that much about it. But it seems like the more you try to sort of make complicated things understandable, the more you try to add some entertainment, you can't help but add things like, analogies, simplifications, maybe oversimplifications, anthropomorphisms, and things like that. Isn't that true? Is in some ways that sort of dilutes science so that you're not getting the real clear, detailed picture of something. Is that true or not?
Thank you for that question. So, in my opinion, of course, simplification will always be a part of education no matter what, whether it is more formal education or popular science. And of course, popular science probably does it to an extent that is much greater than more rigorous science. However, I don't think that this would undermine the pureness of science at all. Because here's the thing: if I give you two scenarios, one, a student who says really likes who is interested by a popular science video due to that simplification that the popular science gives into, and because of that they become more interested in science and they eventually learn science and they pursue a scientific degree. Let's say, compare that with someone who, in their first time watching a science, they start with like a freaking university lecture that's like way too difficult for them. The first person, despite first starting off with something that feels trivial, that feels something that degrades scientists, actually transforms into someone who is more interested in science and contributes more to science, rather than the second person who, in the beginning probably, although in his intent wants to learn rigorously, instead ends up being uninterested in science. So then we can see how popular science does not at all hinder the science being pure. Instead, it just becomes a vehicle for audiences to later develop themselves to higher quality of rigor.
Okay, and one more. Can't it get outdated? I mean, I've watched some TV shows. They weren't popular science YouTube, but I've watched TV shows where, I was watching somebody discuss biology and I said out loud, well, that's what they used to think, but it's different now, right? Now we understand it differently. Can it get outdated and those YouTube videos just last forever out there?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, of course, science is always updated and it will obviously find new discoveries and things like that. However, the thing is, the flexibility of YouTubers is that they have the privilege to classify their popular science videos and whether they want to unlist it or not. For example, there's this video by, I think it's also Veritasium, I forgot, I think it's Veritasium, where he made a video where he said some misinformation or accidentally, or it changed, now with science has been developed, it has changed. What they do if you are say if you're say a teacher, then that's your doom, because then you cannot just call your students one by one from 50 years back and say, okay, something has changed. But as a popular science YouTuber, you have the freedom to just unlist the video and then make a new video that clarifies the mistakes in that previous video. Another thing that I think is that outdatedness is not exclusive to popular science at all. It's actually in all of science. In more academic science, it's also there. It's just that as science communicators, we must have the wisdom to know when to address such inaccuracies.
Good answer. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Wade. All right, I'm going to ask Cliff to come and ask his question. Especially as it relates to something Mr. Zoran said earlier.
Oh, no.
Today's internet users has a short attention span. So how would a popular science keep the average internet people interested? I mean, the people who are not interested in science and has no interest in for me, for example, I don't have any interest in watching any science videos. So when there's a science video that appears in my For You page or something, I will skip it, no matter what's the content. So if it's science, I skip it. So how would this like this popular science make it more interesting, and how do these people that like teach popular science make it so that the people who are not interested or are interested a bit keep it interesting for like a long time? Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Cliff. So, in my opinion, science communicators have a very big responsibility to attract the audiences from the first few seconds. Because the thing about YouTube videos is, and this is not exclusive to popular science, but also all videos, the most important part of the video that you're making is always like the first 5 seconds, necessarily. Because, and that's not even YouTube in general, it's like literally everything relating to education, right, or content dissemination. So the thing is, one thing that I suggest is that the science communicators must first explain the science and hide it in a way that is not really science, but actually show science. I'm not saying like sugarcoat it or like make it seem simpler than it is. Show that it's difficult, and it can be difficult, but it's actually fun. So in the first 10 seconds, say, for example, I'll take an example from a Nile video. In Nile, he does chemistry videos, right? And if he just darkly goes like, okay, this is barium chloride, and what it does is this, nobody will like understand what it does. But if you can say, here I have this weird substance, if we started with saying like, hey, I have this weird substance that I found in my drawer, and when I hold it, it actually melts, and then when I mix it with this, it actually somehow makes something that's useful. Then at first it's not really science, but then accidentally, Nile is actually teaching you like not directly, but then it roots that like your interest for science first. And as time goes on, maybe at first you're like, okay, that's quite cool, but not really cool. But then as the more videos YouTube recommends it, because you decided to watch that first one, the more you'll be like, okay, maybe it's actually quite good. Like actually, maybe even if I don't eventually pursue a science degree, you can at least appreciate the science behind it. And I think that's already a very good part about science that I think should be the responsibility of science communicators to instill in a popular science video.
So what it sounds like you're saying to me is that, like, in some ways, pop science is a marriage of science and rhetoric.
Sure. Despite, oh no, you exposed me.
All right, Ben K, you have a question?
I'm pretty sure he said he would ask the exact same question he asked, but it's going to be like 5 times harder.
Maybe he's already asked you this question. Maybe you have the answer.
I don't.
I have
the
a
answer.
related question.
I don't
to
remember
it.
the question.
YouTube flags creationism in the YouTube algorithm as which is the biblical idea of creation, as scientifically wrong, and adds like Wikipedia page or Britannica page below it as a descriptor of it. Is it a reasonable concern against popular science in YouTube?
That is a very difficult question.
That's why we asked it.
Okay, thank you for that question, though. So, I think that the thing about science is that science is, as I said, always changing. And the thing about science is that there are some gray science of areas that are related to religion and all those things. And those questions are more related to like epistemology than science itself, to be honest. But the thing about, so technically that's kind of just dodging the question. But then the point is that,
Thank you for admitting that.
yeah, but basically the science that falls into those gray areas that are being expressed in popular science actually comes down to the discretion of both the audience and as well as the communicators. Because the thing with a lot of controversial topics like climate change or like LGBTQ and all those things is that you must know that not everyone will believe it. And so when you explain the science behind it, you must be very objective with how you're going to explain it. And that's, of course, my call to action to the science communicators. They must have that wisdom to know when to do something and when to not do something. But from the audiences, we must also know that, okay, well, if YouTube has the smarts to put like the warning in the bottom and actually give you the Wikipedia article or the encyclopedia article for that topic, then you should know that this topic is probably requires more discretion than the usual video. And so it should also be part of our responsibility to watch it with greater wisdom for what will be explained, such that it does not clash with our faith or our beliefs, and subjectively, something like that.
Okay, so my question is similar. It's related to his question. It has to do with YouTube and its algorithm and the agenda behind YouTube, because it is a liberal company. And I have a YouTube subscription, so I feel like super privileged. It's the only subscription I have. Okay?
Even I don't have.
I know, but
It's crazy.
I just go and I just watch a lot of science videos, right? And so I have been watching some videos mostly about like the deep ocean, and then I was watching videos about like worship music. I know, so random, okay? But
Me too.
This is what was coming up. True crime, that's what was coming up on my list. And then very suddenly, there was one video recommendation for transgenderism. Completely out of place. And I don't think that it was an accident that it was on my... I did not look up anything related to transgenderism or related even to science or gender or anything like that. But it popped up on my YouTube page. I believe that YouTube has an agenda and that they're trying to, just kind of like with this creationism, they're not going to flag an evolution video, but they're going to flag a video that is creationist, right? And so maybe it's not that we need more discernment, but it's that YouTube is pushing this particular thing that they believe, and they want you to believe it too. And so who's to say that there aren't YouTube scientists, YouTubers out there who are joining that agenda? And do you think that's dangerous to consume pop science when YouTube obviously is like this?
Okay. Thank you for that question and concern. But I think that like YouTube itself, I strongly believe they don't have an agenda. And the reason I believe that is that when you get those videos, I strongly believe that it's just the algorithm that through like extensive years of machine learning have known that if they recommended that randomly to some person out there, it will most likely have a like more retention. People will start watching it. So they don't have an agenda to say like, okay, I want to spread more LGBTQ videos or more like creationist video or more atheism videos. Instead, it's more like, okay, they know that this video is going to be clicked and that it's gonna make the money. They just want to make money. So the only agenda they have is just, if you want to call that agenda, is money. And so it shouldn't. So then again, of course, in that scenario, of course, we still need regulations to know that, okay, let's make sure that YouTube, even though in trying to make money, doesn't accidentally promote things that are accidentally wrong or like bad for their viewers to watch. And so this is why I actually think that if you watch more about the research in YouTube, they actually work with a lot of governmental agencies, and also specifically in the USA. I don't know about other countries, but in the USA in specific, they actually regulate certain videos. Like they tweak their algorithm so that, okay, even though I know I made you to make money, but in the case where the videos are probably going to be controversial and probably not that good, then maybe don't give those videos to the people. And of course, since machine is not perfect, humans are not perfect, then of course there are probably still some of those few videos, like the ones about transgender that you came across, that probably still came through. However, if you look at it from that perspective, of course it looks like YouTube has an agenda. But if you're looking at it from like a longer timeline, that's actually like a great improvement, like a huge improvement compared to what happens like years ago. Years ago, if you searched up, like if I'm mistaken, like something about cancer, like 8 out of 10 of them is like completely wrong. It's just like some kind of like voodoo magic way to solve cancer, which is not medical. And I read that in a research that was published in like 2014, 2016, like some years ago. And then now when I search that exact keyword in YouTube, like none of those come up. All the videos that come up are from very credible government or hospital videos. And so you can see that YouTube actually already has their own sense of wisdom to like tweak its algorithm such that it also takes into consider those videos that you mentioned.
Oh, that's a really good answer. I have more questions, but we don't have time. So thank you so much, Timothy. Y'all give a hand to Timothy. Congratulations, you're done. All right, the next oration is going to start at 11:15. Okay, so y'all have about a 5-minute break and then come back.